Hello and welcome to the BSI Education Podcast with me, Matthew Childs.
And me, Alan Sellers.
Hello, Alan. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. And how are you, Matthew?
I'm very well, thank you. Particularly well, in fact, as we've had an email sent to us at education@bsigroup.com.
Is that our first email?
First of many, I should think. Dan B. from Bristol writes, "Dear Nathan and Alec." Close enough.
I guess so.
I've been really enjoying your podcast over the past few months, especially the recent episode on stakeholder engagement and how standards are made. Keep up the good work. Well, very nice of you to say so, Dan.
It is rather, isn't it?
It is. But he goes on.
Oh, no.
One thing I've noticed is troubling me. Have you ever realised that both of your voices are very similar? In fact, at times you sound the same. It's so hard. It's actually quite hard to tell you apart. Are you really two people? Well, thanks, Dan B. from Bristol. I can assure you we are two different people. In fact, there's a really easy way you can tell the difference between us. Now, Alan has 4 very young children to my 2. But if you listen very, very closely, every now and again, you can detect the ever so slightly higher level of hysteria in his otherwise calm and tender voice.
I don't know what you mean, Matthew.
So for more insights into Alan's private life, just email education@bsigroup.com. And of course, you can use this email address for any comments, suggestions, or ideas for future podcasts. We really do welcome your feedback. Now, back to the business in hand. The aim of this podcast is to bring you the stories behind standards and standardisation. In this episode, we focus on the role of academic research in standards making.
Our guests are from BSI and University College London. Rob Turpin is BSI Head of Sector for Healthcare, working in areas such as medical devices, clinical services and population health.
Jenni O'Brien is a cybersecurity graduate at IBM. During 2019, she was part of a UCL team of 4 postgraduates who undertook a research project about the Internet of Things.
Natalia has recently completed her postgraduate study at UCL. During 2020, she was part of a team of 5 UCL postgraduates who carried out a research project on the regulatory and standardization challenges for connected and intelligent medical devices.
Both Natalia and Jenni were postgraduates on UCL's Digital Technology Masters in Public Administration. With Rob, Jenni and Natalia, we talk about the relationship between research and standards making and their experiences of taking part in the BSI Student Research Programme. Before we hear from them, a quick reminder that for more information on BSI education, go to bsigroup.com/education. This link and others on the themes raised in this episode can be found in the episode notes. Do please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts and share us on social media using the hashtag BSIEdPod. And of course, get in touch at education@bsigroup.com. So in this episode of the podcast, we are delighted to be joined by Rob Turpin. Hello, Rob. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
We're also delighted to be joined by Jenni O'Brien. Hello, Jenni. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
And we're also delighted to be joined by Natalie. There we go, see? And we're also delighted to be joined by Natalia Mai. Hello, Natalia. How are you?
Hello. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Well, very good. Now, wow, Alan, this is the first time we've had 3 guests on the podcast. Do you think we'll be able to cope?
I'm not too sure, Matthew.
Well, I've heard seen how I've almost ruined the introduction there, but you're all very welcome and it's great to have you here. Now, Rob, you're head of sector at BSI for healthcare. Can you tell us a little bit more about that role?
Certainly. So I have an engineering background, but I've actually been at BSI for 19 years now, just past my 19th year anniversary. And in the past, I've worked on both national and international standardization programs. And for the last 8 years, I've led the work in the healthcare sector. So my role is to develop and maintain BSI's position and relevance in this important market sector by understanding the industry, by understanding the profession, and then the policy drivers and the needs of the sector. And my role is to position BSI's products, services and solutions to support the ambitions of the sector.
Excellent. We'll come back to the sectors later on. But Jenni, how about you? Now, you are a cybersecurity graduate at IBM. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Yes, so I'm currently on the grad scheme, and this is like a 2-year program. And I'm sitting at the minute on both the delivery team and the healthcare and life sciences team within the security business unit. And during our 2 years, we get a chance to switch to different teams depending on what you're interested in.
Excellent. Now, Natalia, you have just graduated. So what about your sort of current position? What's next for you?
I have very recently started my new job as a competition policy manager with Ofcom, the communications regulator in the UK.
Now, in these podcasts, we're always keen to learn about the standards journey of our guests. So how did you get here? And what's been your standards journey? Rob, you might have to go a bit far back, seeing as it's your 19th work anniversary last week. How did you get into standards?
Some time ago, I was working for an engineering organisation, and I felt I'd kind of done as much as I could in that role. And I was really looking for something a little bit different. And I saw a job advertisement. I think it was in the Daily Telegraph at the time. So it was a national publication. And they were looking for program managers to cover specific sectors. And they had some vacancies within what was our engineering sector at the time. So that covers anything from steels, metals, welding, pressure vessels, those sorts of things. And I joined a team of about 20 people and was really focused on the facilitating the standardization process, initially at a national level. So we facilitate national standards committees, which bring together industry experts, and we get them to develop organizational best practices, both at a national level and an international level. Over time, my work took me towards the international programs that we run. So I got heavily involved in fire safety committees, committees running developing pressure equipment standards. And then I moved back to focusing on a specific sector. And at the time, there was an opportunity to develop the healthcare sector further. We've always had a strong presence in relation to medical device in regulation. And the purpose of this role was to grow that, but also to expand on it into wider areas of healthcare. So over the last 7 or 8 years, I've really been focused on what BSI is doing in the medical devices sector from a standardization perspective, but also thinking about the other areas we can expand into, such as digital health, clinical services, and how standards can support the wider population.
Jenni and Natalia, I think you're probably at the other end of the spectrum in terms of just recently graduating. And for me, it's unusual to hear of recent graduates that have an interest in standards. So where does that come from?
You'd always kind of aware of the presence of standards, but for me, it was actually during the MPA, the Masters of Public Administration that we did in UCL. It was in semester 1, we had a class with Irina where she kind of went through the standards, the regulation and the policy, and like how they all kind of relate and their importance and the impact of each one. And I remember it being a really intense class, but it was so interesting. Yeah, really intense, but it was just so cool to just understand how they all function. And then after that class, I saw the BSI symbol, I think, everywhere. And then even Clem, one of my team members during our group project, she like 2 weeks later saw someone with a tattoo of the BSI symbol on their arm. So yeah, it was kind of just mainly from the masters is how I got into standards.
That's the first time I've ever heard of a BSI tattoo.
Yeah,
I wonder what standards that might have been to.
I'd forgotten about that story, Jenni. That's fantastic, actually. And we might get Rob. We are doing this via Zoom, so we might get Rob to reveal his tattoo and tell us where it is, where the BSI symbol is, because obviously we all have them, don't we, Rob? Maybe it's a 20th anniversary thing. Maybe you have to wait until you get there 20 years before you have your BSI tattoo.
That was supposed to be our best kept secret, Matthew.
Natalia, before you tell us your particular journey, I just want to clarify. Jenni, you mentioned there Irina, which is Dr. Irina Brass from UCL, who is one of the course leaders for the Digital Technologies MPA, which we're going to talk about later. Just to remind people listening that we interviewed Irina, for episode 2 of the podcast, where we talked about the importance of standards education and how committed Irina is to supporting undergraduates and postgraduates find out about the world of standards. So Natalia, over to you, your particular journey.
So I think my journey is quite similar to Jenni. So my main interaction with standards and the first time I really got to know them better was during the Masters of Public Administration. I am a lawyer by background, and I practiced for some time. So obviously I did come across standards as a form of self-regulation and so on, but never really understood how they work in practice, and was very curious to understand how they complement regulations. And that's also one of the reasons why I've chosen to do the group project focusing on standards. And yeah, so this has been the focus of my journey.
Before we dive into those group projects, Rob, maybe you could just take us inside how BSI, thinking about the sectors again, about the healthcare sector, what is this strategic approach to standards development? Why does BSI approach this standards development in this way? Who's involved? How does it work? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, so I'm part of a team that develops and implements strategies for engaging with key market sectors and relevant government departments. And across BSI Knowledge Solutions, we have 8 key sectors that we focus on, and healthcare being one of those. And the purpose of this is to ensure that BSI is fully involved in industry, government, sector initiatives from a standardization perspective. So we focus on a 5-year timeframe that considers the direction of market trends in our sectors and the ways that BSI could respond to these trends and help the sector. So in healthcare, a good example is that there are currently some significant changes ongoing in terms of the regulation of medical technology. Those are impacted both by Brexit, but also the implementation of new rules within the European Union. And added to this, there's a growth of digital and data-driven innovations in the medical technology sector. So our strategy has to consider how we respond to this and how we agree actions across all of the BSI Knowledge Solutions teams. So it includes the development of our own standardization committees and standardization programs, but it also includes aspects of marketing, policy, product and content development initiatives.
The role of academic research in this process?
Absolutely. So supporting innovation is a fundamental component within all of our key sectors. And it's particularly noticeable in the life sciences and medical technology space, where a number of new innovations are significantly changing the way that healthcare is delivered. These include things such as robots, implantable devices, drug delivery solutions, wearable technologies, but also there's a really big focus on data-driven solutions such as genomics, healthcare apps, and artificial intelligence. Now, academic research is important to us for 2 reasons. Firstly, it provides an early insight into the pipeline of emerging themes that will impact the healthcare system in the future. This means that BSI can be proactive in the way that it supports these new trends. And then secondly, academic research frames the particular challenges and barriers to adoption of new technologies, which ultimately lead us towards creating new standards-based solutions.
Now, Natalia and Jenni, Rob has mentioned their new and emerging technologies. You mentioned the Digital Technologies MPA you did at UCL. I wonder if you could take us inside that course. You know, what's it about and what attracted you to do it? Maybe I'll ask Natalia that first.
So yes, we've done the Masters of Public Administration at UCL's Department of Science, Science Engineering. Oh, that's embarrassing. Science, Technology, Engineering, and Public Policy. And I think what has really attracted me to this course and what is the sort of distinguishing feature of the course is the very practical orientation. The focus is on solving real problems, big problems. And thinking about how we can use research and all those scientific insights to solve policy problems. And my focus on my route was the digital technologies and policy. And I think this is quite a unique course in terms of I'm not aware of many other courses having this sort of focus and this very practical orientation.
The applied nature is really important, I suppose, isn't it, Jenny? Especially for the group research project that you're asked to undertake. Can you tell us about how that works?
The group project, yeah. So it's essentially runs over 9 months. So it's part of term 2, but you mainly focus on it in term 3 because you have more time and you're not in actual classes. You're sorted into groups of about 4 or 5, depending on who's interested in what projects. And within that, you work with a client. So obviously, our group project got to work with the BSI. So it's working with a real client on a real problem that they kind of want research done around. And yeah, it's everyone gets assigned different roles, and it was just such a great experience in the sense that you're working in these groups because you're going to work in groups for the rest of your lives. So that was a real big pull as to why I wanted to do the MPA, because rather than sitting in a room doing a dissertation by yourself up till all hours, this was really practical, hands-on experience. So yeah, that's kind of how they functioned.
So, Rob, you told us there that academic research plays a really important role in standards development. I just wonder, for a postgraduate research project, what did you think about approaching working on a project of that nature?
I think it was something that was at the front of our minds at the beginning of this year, and it was certainly part of the healthcare strategy that we've developed. To give you an example, back in 2015, we developed a code of practice that was aimed at providing criteria for health and wellness apps, quality criteria. And it was aimed at addressing the wild west of healthcare apps that were appearing on Apple and Google stores, so that organizations and the public could identify which apps were the best and which ones they should give the most attention to. And the work included a range of stakeholders from industry, health professionals. But one of the key aspects for me was the academic input into this project, because actually it was key to determining some of the problems that needed to be addressed. And a really good example of this is academic research showed us that the popularity of a particular app on an app store bore no relevance to how effective it was. And that was something that we had to get right in the standard, because obviously apps need to be marketed to the public, but they also need to be able to demonstrate that they're effective, that they perform in the correct way, and that they perform to their intended use. And that's a key part of the medical device regulations that we're close to, but also it's something that really should apply to all health software, whether it's regulated or unregulated. And so it's examples like that where academic research comes into our projects that we can actually help to build a set of quality criteria that make sense to the organizations that are developing and using health apps. So obviously at the beginning of this year, when I had the opportunity to work on a similar project in relation to connected medical devices, I thought that would be really helpful. It's an area where the regulatory landscape has changed a little bit over time. There are new standards coming out, and BSI really needs to think about how we approach this area, how we maximize our relevance, and the way we support organizations and the healthcare system through the deployment of connected and smart medical devices.
Natalia, Rob's given you a nice segue there into talking about the project itself. Could you take us through your project in terms of the subject, sort of overall approach, and some of the key findings?
Sure, with pleasure. So just to repeat, our project was on regulatory and standardization challenges of connected, intelligent medical devices. It's been fascinating to work on such a fast-moving, important and relevant, potentially life-saving area. The way we've approached the project and the topic, we've done extensive research, both primary and secondary. Primary research consisted of interviews with stakeholders, a survey that we had, and we also had secondary research covering extensive literature review as well as horizon scanning. And we came up with a lot of interesting findings. So our main focus was trying to understand what is so special about those connected intelligent medical devices and what are the main issues and the problems they create. And we came out as a result of some very interesting findings. So just to, for instance, highlight one of the very interesting conclusions that we reached is that the pace of technological change in the field of connected intelligent medical devices means that actually it's very hard for regulations to keep up and to keep on addressing potential problems. And as a result, we have regulatory gaps and grey areas emerging. And we found that actually standards might play a very important role in this context by filling in those gaps and providing a degree of stability in the sector.
And Jenni, your project took place during 2019 around the issue of Internet of Things. Can you tell us a bit more about your project?
Yeah, sure. So ours was kind of to bridge the operational and organizational challenges that SMEs, small, medium enterprises, that they face when they're both kind of navigating, adopting and implementing IoT, the Internet of Things, what their standards and the kind of barriers they also face when trying to implement them and also participate in the standards development process. So then our project was to just research this and then give recommendations to the BSI. And the way that we approached it was it was like a mixed method. So we did an online survey, we did semi-structured interviews, we did desk-based research. The whole focus of the project was to build upon the white paper that the Petra Cybersecurity of the IoT Research Hub did with the BSI previously, because they did a paper just kind of looking to understand the challenges that SMEs are facing in this field. So that was a lot of our desk-based research was looking at what they had already researched and come up with, and then also doing a lot of participant observations, because obviously ours was pre-COVID, so we had the opportunity to go and attend the BSI conference and to go to different IoT industry events. And yeah, so we found quite a number of findings, both in the sense of what benefits that standards give to IoT SMEs, like they provide compliance, safety, security. They provide this kind of baseline for the market for them so that there's agreed set of methodology and definitions, or it can boost IoT SMEs' reputation. But there were quite a number of barriers that we also faced. I won't go into too much detail because it can be quite long. But there was just this lack of understanding of the benefit of standards. They can be viewed as quite burdensome because SMEs obviously don't have the financial time or resources just to participate or to buy these standards. And so they're viewed as more burdensome. And there's also this inaccessibility to the standards online. They were too lengthy and they just didn't have the time to go through everything. And then there was also this lack of awareness by consumers of what products and services are compliant. Sorry, I could go on for a really long time, but they were kind of the main findings that we had.
No, it's excellent, Jenni. Thank you for that. And I think we'll come back later. Obviously, your project was in 2019, but we'll come back later to ask you about what happened next with those findings. I think obviously carrying out research is really important, but obviously the impact that it has is more important. So we'll come back and talk about that in a second. Rob, and I suppose a question for Rob and Natalia really about the research brief, just to sort of get a bit processy. How did you develop a research brief for the project? Who was involved? Maybe Rob, you want to have a go at that first.
So from a BSI perspective, we started with the medical device regulations, which cover safety and performance of devices, and the nature of digital health and connected devices that bring in a security element. So we use the existing regulations and the supporting standards as a basis to start that discussion. And we felt from our perspective that it was an area that was misunderstood. So if we think about physical products as medical devices, there's already a strong regulatory and standardization framework that supports those types of products in terms of risk management, quality assurance, electrical safety, and so on. When you get towards having a connected and digital product, you bring in other considerations relating to cybersecurity. So, for example, you have to think about the environment that the device is working in. The device itself may be working fine. It may be working perfectly in its own environment, but you have to consider how it might interact with clinicians, medical systems, with hospital systems, and with other organizations and people who are involved in the supply chain. So for me, it opens up a series of questions that we didn't really understand, relating to how do connected and smart devices interact with the environment around them, and how do we understand them in terms of ensuring that we reduce risks and we ensure safety and the proper performance of these devices as much as possible.
Natalia, from your perspective, I mean, one of the issues whenever you're conducting a research project is a sense of ownership on it. So I just wonder from your experience, how much you felt working on a project with BSI was a sort of a co-creation. How much do you feel influence you had over the project itself?
I think one of the things that we really enjoyed, my group, about this project is that we actually really had the influence over the direction that the research is taking, and it really was, as you said, the process of co-creation. So, for instance, something that was very important for us, and also because of the interest of the team members, was the innovation landscape. And we are very, very keen to sort of understand a bit better how the innovation in the sector occurs, what are the main actors and what challenges they're facing. And actually, Jenni, it was so interesting to hear you talk about your project, because we actually had some of the similar points of focus and some similar interests to understand how innovation in the sector occurs. And then we realized that actually it's SMEs that have such an important role, but actually they face quite a few more challenges. And this is something that we quite pushed in our research, and came up very early in our project planning stage, came up with the idea of the entrepreneur's guide that we wanted to produce to help entrepreneurs in this field, various SMEs, to navigate those challenges that regulations and standards are creating for them. And that was one of the initial ideas that we sort of presented to Rob and the BSI team, and one of the examples of how we actually co-created this project and the direction.
Just on the practicalities, then you've talked there about how the brief itself was a co-creation. Sort of another practical consideration, sort of how did it work? I mean, given that you are a group of students working at a university, BSI as a sort of corporate client sitting elsewhere, how did it work on a practical level in terms of contact and communication and sort of project management?
Yes, so I think obviously for us what was quite difficult is that we are working throughout the COVID pandemic and then the first lockdown. Luckily, we managed to have a face-to-face meeting with the BSI team just before, I think it was in February 2020, so just before things kick off. And I think that was very valuable for us to be able to come to the BSI offices, to meet the team in person, and we were very grateful for this opportunity. And subsequently, we kept in very regular contact. So we had more or less monthly meetings, monthly calls scheduled to catch up. But actually, there was so much more communication above this. I think overall, we had email exchanges every week, more or less. And that was very, very valuable for us to sort of ensure that, despite not being able to meet the BSI team anymore in person, we were on the right track, that we were able to check with BSI whether they're happy with the direction we're going in and whether there are any different angles to our research that we should take. And actually, we had also additional calls of more ad hoc to discuss, for instance, feedback on our deliverables, or any sort of more difficult technical issues that we encountered. And we're very grateful for the BSI team willingness to engage with us in this way.
And Jenni, would that be a similar experience that you had, obviously in a pre-COVID environment in 2019?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad that the other team got to go to the BSI or to go to the offices before COVID hit, because that is still one of our favorite days that we talk about. Just getting to go into the BSI and kind of meet the team. But yeah, no, absolutely. The interactions were so responsive. I was kind of the main point of contact for the emails, but there were constant emails, Skype calls. If we ever had a problem, we could always ask you. And just, yeah, it was so lovely to have someone that would come back to us so quickly and so helpful, because it just made the experience, it felt like we were being supported the whole way through, which was great. And then obviously you were really helpful with doing drafts, looking at drafts just to make it more business-like, and then inviting us to the BSI conferences. And it always felt like there was this open dialogue between us.
Rob, from a client side, obviously getting the research brief right is always the most important thing before you kickstart any project. How about your experience this year working with Natalia and the team there? How did the project evolve for you? Was it the sort of experience you anticipated, or was it better?
So aside from COVID-19, yes, it went very, very well. I think we had a good separation between the general progress of the project, the timelines. Were we developing the whole program in the right way, versus answering specific questions on particular parts of the project? So for me, there was a really good separation, and some really clear planning on how we covered both of those parts without muddying the water or confusing things. So for me, there was always a clear direction and a clear understanding of the progress we've made on the project, what had gone well, where we might need to apply some more resources or some further thinking. And pretty much the whole way through, we kept to the timelines that we'd agreed at the start. But that was separated from particular questions that came up during the program that we would endeavour to answer more quickly, usually around a particular point relating to a standard, for example, or how a standard was applied, or a particular regulatory challenge, or an innovation problem.
Could just add up on this. I think that was so helpful for us to be able to ask those questions to BSI, just because we're dealing with such a technical and difficult topic with so many layers. So it was very helpful for us to be able to ask those questions and get some responses to guide us further.
Jenni, you mentioned there about one of the highlights of not only your project, but your life, by the sounds of it, of going to the BSI HQ in Chiswick.
But any day where I get to go to BSI Towers is a happy day, Matthew.
Or Excellence HQ, as nobody calls it apart from me. I'm interested in the sort of opportunities you were given during the project. Jenni, you referenced a couple of times that the BSI conferences are national standards conferences we hold a couple of times each year. And in fact, the next one is coming up this November. Can you tell us about the other opportunities you were given, or maybe just first tell us about the conference that you presented at?
Yeah. So we got to present. We did like 3 workshop kind of breakout sessions. So we got to like present our project, but the majority of the time was spent actually asking questions to the people in the room to kind of get a better understanding of what they think of the standards development process. And so that kind of then provided the baseline for our survey. And then it was also so invaluable in the sense that we got to do a lot of networking opportunities. And from the conference, we actually got to interview 3 people as part of the project. So it was great just for a networking kind of stance as well. And then I actually went back then a second time in November with Elizabeth, one of my team members. And that was great just to go back and see everyone and just kind of catch up, because I recognized loads of the people. And we actually got to see a picture of us, how it was on the cover of the booklet for the November one, which was, I don't know, it was cool. But then other opportunities were the BSI then kindly, with our survey, they marketed it for us. They sent out emails. And then because it was kind of hard to get an incentive for SMEs to participate in the survey, the BSI then kindly said that anyone who completed the survey would then have a limited time access to BSOL, which is the British Standards Online Database. So that was a really great incentive to get more people to participate in all of our research. So yeah, it was great. And then just the feedback and stuff that we got as well. So it was really invaluable.
And Natalia, you also took advantage of the conferences this year.
Yes, some very quite similar experiences to Jenni. So we participated in the conference, but because of COVID, it was an e-conference. So obviously that was a slightly different setup, but we ran a session with participants, asking them presenting our research and asking them different questions. It was so valuable, although it was very early in our at the very early stage in our research. It was very valuable to engage with the stakeholders and be able to ask those questions to see whether we are going in the right direction. And there were also numerous other opportunities. BSI has been extremely kind and generous in sharing contacts with interviewees with us, which gave us an amazing opportunity to engage with some people that probably would be very hard normally to interview for us, and we wouldn't be able to get access to them. And I think this has had an incredible impact on the quality of our research and the quality of insights that we are able to produce. And we also had the survey that the BSI was kindly hosting on the website and helped us reach out to people.
Actually, it's a very important point you've raised there, Natalia, about sort of the group effort. And Rob, from the BSI's perspective, the opportunities were given for other people within BSI to take part. It wasn't just yourself.
Absolutely. So within BSI, we're really grateful for the work that UCL has undertaken for us. It's been a really worthwhile opportunity. Not just for myself, but for the other teams involved. So we've involved our research and insights team in this program. We've involved a medical devices specialist as well, who has experience within the BSI regulatory services team. Going forward, this is an activity that we would like to build on and repeat in future years, because I think it really helps BSI to build an insight into the pipeline of novel technologies or changes within a particular sector. I think we've done a really good job this year in identifying some of the challenges relating to this particular area of connected medical devices and how standards and standardization fits into that. And I definitely think it's an opportunity we would like to repeat across our wider sector teams going forward.
Now, Jenni and Natalia, it sounds to me like you had a great experience, which is really good to hear from carrying out the research. So obviously it's a learning experience, very, very important, and made obviously a contribution to your MPA program, and obviously helped you graduate, which is fantastic. And looking like obviously you both secured new jobs, which is also fantastic as well. But obviously having a great learning experience is one thing. Implementing the results of the research is another. So maybe Rob, if I could ask you, how will this year's project on connected intelligent medical devices, how will the report recommendations be implemented? What will BSI do with the research findings?
So first of all, we're in the process of publishing the report and the entrepreneur's guide on our website. And we will maximize that through a number of publicity activities. But also going forward, it's vital that we build on the recommendations that are set out in the report. So we'll be incorporating these into our strategy going forward, and we'll be working across a number of our internal teams to implement them over the coming months. One of the key aspects for me is the report comes up with a series of recommendations that talk about BSI being a global champion for standards development in emerging technologies. Also about reviewing ethical considerations, so topics that sit slightly away from our traditional home of medical device regulation. Trying to facilitate SME participation in the standardization processes, and also making standards more understandable. One of the problems and one of the challenges we will have in this space is standardization sits in several different committees in several different areas at the moment. And I think one of the things we can do is start to provide more oversight that helps to address some of these particular challenges. So how do we start to bring SMEs into our process so that they get an overview of what's going on? How do we ensure that BSI is taking the lead in areas such as artificial intelligence, which is going to be a global driver for healthcare?
So Jenny, I'm just thinking about what your 2019 project
Mhm.
and really sort of what happened next. Obviously, for the team members, but also for the project itself.
So it was originally published on the IoT1 committee homepage, but we're also at the minute looking to get the paper published. So we're working with Arena, obviously all over Skype because we're in different parts of the globe. But to not let it go to waste, just to use all of the research that we did to then get it published in academic journals. So we're still in the process, but that should hopefully be soon. There was 4 team members: myself, Clem, Elizabeth, and Isabella. And Elizabeth is back in the US. She's working as a research associate in Washington, D.C. for PEC, Madigan Jones, just kind of focusing on technology, cybersecurity. And then Isabella is working as a developer at the FinTech Curve. She's on the DevX team. And then Clem is working in Microsoft France on digital transformation. So we all have jobs, thankfully.
And as I understand, Isabella has become a standards maker.
She has indeed. Yes, she did. Yeah, she did that almost immediately after we finished the group project. She sits on the cards and security devices for personal identification. Even when I asked her about it, she said she was absolutely loving it. They've recently upgraded, I think, their committee to a new portal so that you can see all the working papers in one place, because before I think it was via email. But yeah, she seems to be getting on great with it, which is fantastic just to see that, she's still involved in the standards world.
Excellent. And for the 2020 for the 2020 team, I'll put my teeth in and have another go at that. For the 2020 team, Natalia, what's happened to the team members?
Yeah, so the team, it was 5 of us, myself, Mala, Jekwi, Gabriela, and Jan. And obviously we finished very, very recently, but as I understand, the team is embarking on a really diverse range of careers, which is very exciting. And I think it shows where our MPA and the project, to how many different places it can take us. But the careers are ranging from startups to public sector to research, with a lot of people being very close to emerging technologies and digital technology. And I think what I can say, which is very exciting, is that one of our team members, Gabriela, she's working on a lot of standards related projects and is now also a member of some of the BSI committees, specializing in AI and, as I understand, mirror committees as well.
We started this work in February before any of us considered that we could be going into a lockdown. And yet UCL has managed to deliver a fantastic piece of work, despite the fact that we had to move meetings, events, and interviews to being virtual. But for me, I think the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the need for smart and connected medical devices in the future. There's now a greater interest in monitoring public health and well-being and to drive healthcare delivery from more remote locations. And therefore, the report and its outcomes are very, very timely for us.
I wanted to add about some of the fantastic opportunities that we had as a result and as part of this project. So very recently, 2 of our team members have presented our research at a cybersecurity conference. It was great that we could apply and present those findings in a different setting, not only to BSI, but also to a wider community. And another thing that we found very useful at the very early stages of the project was that we could attend some of the BSI committees. I think it was fascinating to better understand how the committees work and how the standardization process works in practice. And this has also allowed us to get exposure to some stakeholders as well. Something that I think for me was one of the big values and also challenges of the project is that it was really a proper big lesson in flexibility and adaptability. And I think not only COVID-19 and how we all had to adjust, but actually when we were working on our project on medical devices, there were so many changes in the field of medical devices itself that required us to be very flexible and dynamic. So for instance, as an example, the medical device regulation was meant to be implemented in May 2020. But then I think in April, it was announced that actually it would be delayed for a year, which was very important in the context of our research. And probably even more sort of tellingly, just a week before the submission of our final written report, the MHRA issued some very important relevant guidelines on medical device regulation in the post-Brexit era. And I have to say the Brexit and like the future of the regulation of medical devices in the UK after Brexit was one of those important question marks that we had throughout the entire project, that we didn't really know where the policy direction is and where we're heading. So it was I'm very glad that these guidelines came in before we submitted our project, but also it required us to do some very last minute adjustments and edits. I think as a result, we are able to make it more relevant and more grounded in the developments.
Yeah, no, just a final thought on just what a great opportunity it was to do the student research program, and how highly I recommend it to anyone to do, because it's just their skills that that I know that I've taken with me even into my new job. And it was just such a fantastic opportunity to work with the team, with Matthew, Sophie, and all the other team members together, and just to understand how research works, but with a client as well on the other side of it. And just, yeah, it was an amazing opportunity. And I'm so glad that I chose to do this project.
You have been listening to an episode of the BSI Education Podcast. For more information on BSI Education, go to bsigroup.com/education. This link and others on the themes raised in this episode can be found in the episode notes. Do please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts, and share us on social media using the hashtag BSIEdPod. And if you have any comments, suggestions, questions, or ideas for future podcasts, then do please get in touch at education@bsigroup.com. We welcome your feedback. All that remains is for me to say thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenni.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalia.
Thank you. It was great to join you today.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
And of course, to thank you for listening.